Hey guys, welcome back to more Entitled Neighbor Stories. In this video, a Karen demands I swap houses with her, and when I refuse, she calls the police on me. Let's dive right into this story. And the first one starts like this. I spent years working as a firefighter in New York City. The FDNY is a crazy job, and when I came to retire, I knew that I had a lot of choices I could make. And I'll admit, I spent more time than I would like to say doing a whole lot of nothing. Maybe it was just getting older, but I went from loving the fast life of the city to kind of hating it. My late aunt lived on a rural farmhouse in another state that she had left me. I was kind of just paying taxes on the land, but not really visiting it at all. With nothing else grounding me to where I was, I decided to move. The place was going to need a lot of attention and renovation, but I got it looking pretty nice. One of the things that I changed as little as possible was the house itself. My aunt's home, while old, was beautiful and had the kind of charm I feel like doesn't always exist anymore. The porch is wrapped up all around and the windows are big to let in a lot of sun. After fixing up what was broken on the house, I moved onto the land. Honestly, it just needed a new fence and new grass and all of that basic stuff. Her old fruit trees were still alive and producing. At the point of writing this, I'm 63 years old, but I moved back when I was 55. Now, about 2 years ago, I got a new neighbor that moved into an empty property next to mine. It did not have a house and she did not build one, she just showed up in a beat-up looking trailer. Outside of it, she had a few cheap lawn chairs and would play bad music really loudly. I couldn't tell at first when she would speak to me if she was just trying to be friendly or if she was crazy. I hope it's not a spoiler to tell you all now that the answer is the latter. She did seem very interested in my house though, and most of the comments she made to me were regarding it. Asking how many rooms I had and then talking about how she could fit her entire family in there. Comments asking why I lived in such a big place when it was only me. Some of the questions were more intrusive, like asking how much the house was worth. Others were flat-out rude comments saying that some people don't deserve to live in a place that nice. People get the impression that being from New York makes you unfriendly. Well, the truth is that we can be some of the nicest people around if you need help, but when it comes to our business, we tend to like being left alone. Things got extremely crazy one day though, because she flat-out decided to ask if I would be willing to swap homes with her. I thought it was a joke and I laughed at her, which she took as me being extremely rude. I think she qualifies as what people call a Karen online today, so I'm gonna stick with that name for her. Me, I'm sorry for laughing. I just really thought you were making a joke. Karen, it's no joke. Listen, it makes perfect sense for the two of us to swap homes. And you don't need to worry because I will sign my trailer over to you. It's big enough for one person. I have kids though, and I'm a woman, so it makes more sense that I have the house. Me, I'm sorry but no. Even if it was a fair trade, this house was my aunt's and I'm not giving it away. Karen, the kids need some space. I know you have been complaining about them making noise outside, and well, there's nowhere for them to play in a trailer. You're just a single old man, you don't need that much room or trees or any of that. Me, the answer is no, and that's it. Karen, you're such a greedy, nasty old man. I bet you spent your entire life being selfish and not caring one bit about anybody else. I had to leave at that point because she was starting to get under my skin. Calling me selfish when I could take off my shirt and show her exactly when and how I got burns from helping people. I wanted to cool down, but things didn't because of Karen. She would glare at me from her property and yell at me when I did anything outside. I understood the struggle of not having a lot of space with kids, and I didn't care about them playing outside at all. I only made one comment to her, and that was to ask her kids to not climb my fruit trees, and that was it. Hell, I lived in an apartment with 2 brothers, 5 of us in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, and I kept a journal though, and in it I wrote everything she did and said to me. I dated it all too, just because I want to be careful. Looking back, it was probably the smartest thing I did. The yelling turned into her just flat out going onto my property. She would make some excuse like telling me her kid kicked a ball into my yard when I know they didn't. It was just flat out trespassing, and I did not like the idea of whatever it is she could have been up to. I could not be around 100% of the time though. After all, I wanted to enjoy my retirement. I went on a day-long fishing trip and came back to find that my garage had been spray painted. In big red letters she had written, Promise to me. On it, she had also been going around telling our other neighbors that I offered her the house and then decided to back out thinking it was funny to mess with her. Luckily, these people had known me for years and when I spoke to them, they believed me. She had somebody drop off some crazy letter that she clearly wrote up herself. It was claiming that I agreed to give her the house as an act of goodwill, saying that I needed to sign it and that she had already filed it with the state. I was done at this point and got my own attorney. He told me it was legally meaningless. At the same time, I should save it with my other accounts of her behavior. Well, I did the only thing that I could think of. I reported her to the sheriff, explaining the trespassing, the graffiti that I knew was her despite lack of proof, and the crap she pulled serving me. The sheriff could only warn her, but since she didn't break the law yet, there was nothing they could do. And yes, I know she trespassed, but I couldn't prove that just yet. I got serious getting cameras and posting no trespassing signs on my house. If she was gonna do this, I wanted to make sure that I caught her in the act. The sheriff and another officer did come, but it was not because I called them. When she called 911 on me, it was her claiming that she had a squatter on her property and needed the police to come right away. I did not get arrested as she planned because I had a copy of the deed and I had no issues providing that to them as well. They apologized and I asked flat out if he could do anything about Karen between this call and the fake housing agreement thing. Sadly, they couldn't do anything without more hard proof. The other did say that more fake calls to the police could also cause her to have problems. I spoke to my attorney about getting a no contact order against Karen and he told me that he could try, but since there was never any violence or threats or anything serious, it might not happen. Still, he helped me apply for one, and with the yelling, trespassing and fake paperwork I was granted a 1-year no contact order. Since she sprayed on my garage before, it was clear that Karen knew how to read, or at least one of her kids did, but I guess no contact order was just too many words for her to grasp. Well, and then finally I caught her on cameras trespassing onto my land with another woman, her friend. She was pounding on my door and screaming that she was taking what was hers. I, of course, was not dumb enough to open that door and instead called the police on her. The entire time I'm waiting for them to arrive, she is having a total meltdown on the other side of the door, punching it, kicking it, screaming, and even crying. Trying and failing to destroy my porch railing just out of anger. I did not know one human being could have that much steam in them to keep going. Heck, she was still going when the police showed up to arrest her. I finally opened my door once I knew she was secure and not able to run right into it. I had ready the no contact order to show them, and finally they were able to arrest her and charge her with something. Two things actually, trespassing and violating a court order. I didn't have to do much of anything when it came to the courts, which I was happy about. Like I said, I just want to enjoy my retirement, not waste it on dealing with Karen and her crap. I guess the no contact order was good though, because Karen was not just getting a slap on the wrist with a fine. She had probation and was gonna need to do a bunch of community service. I even heard from neighbors that she was in court-mandated counseling. Part of me hopes that CPS gets involved too, because she's clearly not stable as a person. Who knows what she is like as a mother? The best news for me though was that I was not gonna need to deal with her despite the fact that she was not going to jail. It also turns out the land she had been parking on was not owned by her. Whoever owned it had gotten so many complaints that they wanted Karen to be gone within 30 days. I didn't know who owned the land, but I guess other neighbors did and were tired of her crap too, since I was not the only person she and her kids bothered. I was just the only one she tried to steal a house from. Let me tell you that I cannot explain in words the relief I felt the day that she was gone. I came outside, saw the trailer gone, and the air that went into my lungs was the freshest I ever had. I'm also really glad that I didn't push things or try to get even with her like I might have when I was younger. I still think it's good revenge when the system works and your enemy gets their karma without you needing to do much. And yeah guys, I really hope for you that you will never have a Karen neighbor like this. I would rather have a worst enemy than such a person living next to me. Also, if you enjoy the Karen stories, please don't forget to like the video and leave me a comment, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much for your help. The next one is a fantastic neighbor malicious compliance story, and it is titled A Neighbor Lawyer and His Fans. So a coworker told me this story a few years ago. This happened in the early 2000s. So we are electricians and he once had something to do at a lawyer's house. You can imagine a big house and a lot of property, everything was really nice, except on one side there was a mound of earth, is this correct in English? Basically a long pile of dirt all the way at the property line. He asked said lawyer about it and he told him that he hated that neighbor and there had once been a 10 feet 3 meter fence. Well, the neighbor hated him as well and had him tear down the fence since the community regulations only allowed 6.2 feet / 2 meter fences. Since he is a lawyer and a mad lad, he read the regulations, bought a lot of dirt and built this long 6.5 feet / 2 meter pile of dirt and installed a 6.2 feet / 2 meter fence exactly as the regulations required. That is what happens if a petty lawyer hates you. And because it was so nice, let's read another malicious compliance story. This one is about an absolutely awful, corrupt manager, and trust me guys, this one you don't want to miss. It starts like this. So about a couple decades ago, I used to work at a concrete production plant for a reputable construction company. Our company, like several other construction companies, were awarded a portion of a larger project. A large portion of land was earmarked for setting up temporary office buildings and concrete plants for the different construction companies. The sites were separated by temporary barriers and had separate entrances. As many of you may or not know, concrete is produced by mixing cement, water, sand and stone grids size 20 mm by 10 mm along with special admixtures in a specific ratio. Well, our recipe also contained a special ingredient, stone dust. It turns out only our company used stone dust in our concrete and the neighbors did not. So a special truckload full of stone dust was especially shipped for us. This is important later. My job entailed orchestrating concrete delivery to our project sites apart from regular quality control tasks like checking incoming materials for quality, etc. Only after I had signed the delivery receipts, our store's personnel would unload the trucks at designated areas. And then a log of all trucks entering and leaving the concrete batching plant would be kept by security at the gate, which is relevant later. Since my job entailed checking incoming material before accepting, the suppliers would usually try to offer some petty bribes, from cash to booze to flesh, if you know what I mean. What the hell? And I always declined such offers, as once accepted, you became their dog and lose all respect in their eyes. Moreover, bad material also impacted the quality of concrete produced, strength, consistency, setting time, just to name a few. Since concrete delivery was also part of my job, it was in my best interest to only accept good material, otherwise the client would chew me up during casting. One night, a supplier truck entered the premises with 20 mm stone chips. Upon testing, I found them to be undersized for 20 mm and oversized for 10 mm. I went ahead and rejected the load. The driver and supplier started pestering me, offering bribes and whatnot. When I didn't budge, they called my boss, who asked me what was going on, and I explained that the quality of material was unacceptable and I have rejected this. When I mentioned it's too small for 20 mm, he ordered me to dump it in 10 mm bin anyway. I knew what that meant. My boss was on the supplier's payroll. A couple of weeks passed by and my boss asked me to reject a truckload of material from a very reliable supplier. He knew that the supplier was only delivering stone dust that day, and should we reject material, the entire load would be a waste and a loss to the supplier. Once the stone chips or stone dust has left a quarry, they, for some reason, cannot bring it back. Hence my boss wanted to hit the supplier where it hurts the most, especially stone dust, as there was no other company that would take it. So cue the malicious compliance. I called the supplier, who had become a friend by now, and told him that I was under orders to reject a truck. He panicked and told me that my boss was putting pressure on him for bribes. This particular supplier believed in providing quality material and always visited my lab to understand how I tested the material and what my requirements were. He would then go back to his quarry and adjust the equipment to deliver the best quality materials. Because he put so much effort in improving the quality of his product, he did not budge and bow down to my boss's demands. I asked the supplier friend to route a truckload of 20 mm stone chips meant of some other company to my plant first. I would let the gate security lock the truck's entry and then promptly reject the material. He was then supposed to send the stone dust, which I would accept, and be done with my task. Everything happened as planned. I completed my remaining activities for the night and went home. When I came back to work in the evening, my boss was waiting for me at the door. As expected, he had checked the entry/exit log as well as material receipt history. He had noticed that I'd accepted the stone dust and was chewing his anger, waiting for me to explain. He very casually asked me if I had rejected a truckload. I acted dumb and answered in affirmation. I told him that the very first truck, a 20mm, was rejected. Now usually 20mm is never rejected, especially from this supplier, so he asked me what reason did I give while rejecting the truckload. I said flakiness indexed, a test we never do as field test, but it's mandated by the client to be done once a quarter. He knew that I was playing him, but he couldn't do anything. I had done exactly what he had asked me to do, reject a truckload. Basically, I had covered my bases with the security log as well as material receipts, so he just muttered something under his breath and never mentioned this to me again or asked me to do anything similar. 2 months later, he was transferred to a different site and I became the overall person in charge, same designation and pay, just more responsibilities. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. So about 20 years ago, I took a look at my life and realized that I was totally miserable. I was living in the suburbs and had a typical job and just hated every second of it. Dealing with a big house for no reason and being around people with the constant chattering and problems. I moved onto a piece of land that didn't really have much of anything around it. I got a mobile home, which at the time was pretty sad, but over the years they've made much better ones. With all the amenities I could need and honestly barely looking like what most people think of when they hear mobile home. I think nowadays most people call them manufactured homes, but I stick with what I'm used to. In case you want to Google a picture though, try manufactured home. Anyway, the life was so much better than before and I got to be out in the wild outdoors. Get a couple of dogs that love to run around the property too. It was perfect for the first 10 years and then stuff started changing. I was not the only person that noticed the big empty land and some developer came in and bought up a huge chunk of it. Building houses and basically another suburb type community that I was trying to get away from. Luckily, I owned a good amount of the land and was able to keep my distance from them. I'm not antisocial or anything, I just like living where I can breathe and not be on top of a ton of other people. I made friends and got to know some of the people in that nearby community and they seemed nice enough. More years passed with no problems and then about 5 years ago, an HOA formed in that community. Something that shouldn't have affected me at all, but of course the people running it didn't see things that way. One of them showed up to my property to speak to me. She didn't look like she belonged near the wilderness with her big hair and bigger attitude. She was an entitled Karen. Me, can I help you? Karen, I'm here to talk about your property and some violations I noticed. Me, what do you mean violations? Are you from the state or something? HOA Karen, no, I'm with the HOA obviously. We put some new bylaws into effect and your property seems to be breaking quite a few of them. It really is unacceptable. Me, I'm gonna stop you right there. I think you got confused because I am not part of the HOA or the neighborhood. I just live next door to you all. HOA, excuse you, don't interrupt me when I'm speaking. She kept insisting that I was part of the HOA and said that I owed her money and that I had to fix the problems. I was steaming because I left to get away from nimrods like her and here she was trying to screw me over. So, not listening to a word I said, I ignored her and went on living my life. Getting letters and stuff from the HOA constantly telling me that I was violating rules and owed them money. Not that it mattered, but if you're curious, they were saying that my home was illegal. Since it was a mobile home, it didn't have foundation in the ground, which they were claiming violated rules. So apparently mobile homes were not allowed and I had to get rid of it and get a more traditional home. I told them to call the cops and tried telling them to get me to throw away my house. I was here long before them and knew most of the local police department. They never had a problem with me and I knew they would not side with the HOA. The HOA knew it too because they decided to get sneaky about it. I went to the doctor to get checked out, but due to the remote area, it basically meant I was gone all day. I came back to find that my house was gone. Tire tracks leading off the property and onto the main road. Basically, I had been robbed of my entire home and everything in it. The only thing they left were my dogs who were running around confused and looking for me. I had some camping equipment that I kept in my trunk, so I was at least able to camp out for the night and figure everything out in the morning. I knew that Karen had something to do with it and would report her for stealing my house. Like I said before, I was friendly with the entire police department and they agreed to search the area for where my house could have been stashed. It's not like hiding a key or something, it's a whole house. There were a lot of people that could have done it, but with how much Karen had been harassing me to get rid of it, she was a prime suspect. They must have scared her something awful, because she didn't last long before blabbing to them where my house was. I got it back on my property, but you can be sure I was pressing charges and taking Karen to court for stealing from me. In fact, I decided to sue the HOA as a whole for harassment, theft, trespassing and threats, etc. I don't know what they told their lawyers, but they went in with a ton of wrong information that just ruined the entire case for them. They were countersuing, claiming that I owed them like $30,000 in fines and had stolen back a property that they had repossessed due to lack of payments. Which honestly makes zero sense, because you cannot repossess a thing that you never owned in the first place. Their lawyer started going off about how it had been a year and the HOA had not received a single monthly payment that I owed, did not pay a single fine that had been issued to me, and I refused to comply with them. And therefore, under HOA law, they were allowed to take my property and sell it to get themselves paid. The judge might have thought it was an open and shut case of an HOA member not wanting to follow rules. However, then my lawyer started to speak and the judge got a really serious look on his face, and the opposing lawyer looked really confused and started whispering to the HOA Karen. My lawyer said that there was nothing on file for me joining the HOA in the first place and agreeing to their terms. That I was living there before the HOA and could not be forced into joining either. Finally, the fact that my property on a map was outside of the HOA neighborhood, meaning that even if I wanted to be part of the HOA, I couldn't. Then the police report was shown of my home being stolen from me with all of my possessions in it, a repo that didn't make any sense, but also not even having a paper trail. The HOA had to pay me a bunch of money, but also for breaking the law, Karen had a ton of personal fines and even community service to do. I think the only thing that let her escape a jail sentence was the fact that my home was found the next day with nothing sold or missing. I think it was still crap that Karen didn't go to jail, but at least she didn't get off scot-free. Something about thinking her with a big hair and fancy purse being made to pick up trash makes me smile. Not all revenge is created equal, but if it keeps her out of my hair, I'm happy about it. Also, the HOA was told if they contacted me again, they would be arrested for harassment and facing much bigger charges for a repeat offense. All of this was 3 years ago, and so far I have not heard a peep from any of them. Honestly, I expected Karen at least to blame me and try to come back and yell at me, but it turns out that people didn't like living next to a thief, and while nobody could make her leave officially, there were other ways. People made it clear she wasn't liked or wanted, and she was shockingly smart enough to get the hints and leave once all her community service was served. And before we end the video, let's read one last funny malicious compliance story. This one is titled, "Manager said no phones during work hours, period, so I stopped answering his calls." So I work in IT support for a medium-sized company. We've always been allowed to have our phones at our desks. Sometimes family emergencies happen, doctors call back, whatever. As long as we are not scrolling social media all day, nobody cared. Well, a new manager comes in last month, sees one person checking a text and loses it. Then sends out an email saying, "Effective immediately, no personal phones during work hours. They must be left in your car or locker. This means 9 to 5, no exceptions. Anyone caught with a phone will be written up." Okay, sure boss. The thing is, our manager works from home 3 days a week, and when server issues pop up after hours or on weekends, guess how he contacts us? That's right, our personal phones, because we don't have company phones. On a Friday afternoon, 4:45 PM, a major server issue. I see it, I could fix it in 10 minutes, but my phone is in my car as per policy. I calmly finish my work at 5 and walk out. By the time I get to my car and check my phone at 5:15, I have 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly panicked texts from my manager. The server has been down for 30 minutes, multiple departments cannot do anything. I call him back saying, "Hey, just got to my car and saw your calls. What's up?" He is furious, molding and seething, asking why I didn't answer, and I reminded him about the no phones policy from him. He says that's different, this was an emergency. I point out his email that said, "No exceptions," and I was just following policy to avoid a write-up. And then Monday morning, a new email that said, "Personal phones are permitted at desks for emergency purposes." Back to normal then. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the stories, and I will see you again tomorrow.